It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for, well, Computer America, because we have a great show planned for you with none other than Ralph Bond. He, of course, joins us to talk all about science and technology trends, being our science and technology trends correspondent. And yeah, he has picked out a handful of great stories that you definitely want to hear about. Everything from space age technology, which is a little ironic talking about what we're going to talk about, to just purifying water, extending the range of vehicles. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great mixed bag that you definitely want to hear about. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, at the very top, it should be like the third section, Ralph Bond. He has a whole corner of our website that is completely dedicated to what he does here with us. And you can find the latest show notes, you can find the latest videos, you can, of course, wherever podcasts are heard, you can hear the shows themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, you can, of course, find links to anything and everything in the show notes. So very key moment there, computeramerica.com. And just want to keep reminding people that we will be taking off the last week of December. That's like the one time that we do. And with that being said, when we come back, we'll be jumping, both feet first into CES 2024, usually our busiest time of the year. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So early January, look forward to that. Always do. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on and, hey, get the show started. It should be a really good segment, and I'm looking forward to this. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program. I hope that you've been well.
Hey, doing great, and it's great to be back. And again, like you said, we've got a really fun mixed bag. And what I do is look for news stories that reflect trends, key trends in science and technology. Then it can be anything from robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, across the board. And today's 4 stories sort of reflect this mixed bag, and they're positive. They will leave you feeling encouraged about the future of our world. And you can learn all about these stories, get the links, pictures, links sometimes to videos, everything in the show notes. Come out to computeramerica.com, click on the tab that has my name, Ralph Bond, and you'll find the show notes for today, and you can dive deeper because we're going to give you the highlights. That's what we do each Friday.
Right, and he says trends, but I think story number 1 probably won't be a trend for everything. But
that's true.
It's still a lot of fun, and of course, it's very futuristic. So definitely check that out. And I just as a complete aside, just as like a personal story, we're gonna have a few more people at our house for Christmas this year, Ralph. And I got to say that we signed up for like this secret Santa thing, where instead of everyone getting gifts for like 15 people, everyone kind of gets partnered up with someone. And I got to say, I got my wife. So, don't tell anyone who's going to be there because you're supposed to keep that secret from everyone else. But as someone who has just gotten their own wife as their secret Santa, that really takes like a lot of the guesswork out of this. Like I'm like, some people I've never even met before. What do I get them? That whole thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have like good gift ideas, feel free to send them in and I'll share them with the audience. If you have like a good generic gift to get people either from the office or, family that you don't really know or stuff like that, because I'm sure that comes in handy a lot. But Ralph, I got to say, again, just getting someone that I do know very well, man, makes it a lot easier. So would recommend.
Oh, it does. Yeah, our family's been doing a similar thing in one of these Secret Santa kind of online deals where you're autonomous, but you're matched up with a family member. But in this system, they say, do you, is there something you would want? And we
use the service called Elfster.
Oh, that's interesting. No, that's not the one we're using, but yeah, it's helpful. It does help. And to your point, instead of having to buy a gift for 10 different family members, No, you just get paired up with, and it rotates each year, so that's kind of fun as
Right.
well. I like those systems.
Yeah, we're having to get creative because Christmas is just getting so convoluted. But ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
with that being said, why don't we go ahead and jump? Speaking of convoluted, let's
Yes.
talk about the 4 stories that we have today, because some of these, sometimes the stories get a little bit heady. Like they're definitely interesting and they're definitely worth you knowing about. Sometimes they get a little bit above your head, but Ralph still does a great job of kind of breaking these down. And I think story number 1 is kind of a good example of that, because space age technology, that's what you slap on things that you either want to sell on late night television or
Yes.
is really, really complicated. And you just say, oh, it's it's space, it's rocket science. Who can figure that stuff out?
Yeah.
Well, story number 1 is kind of going low tech. So let's talk about this.
Yes, I could not resist this headline. NASA and Japan Space Agency, to launch world's first, wait for it, wooden satellite as soon as 2024. What?
Wooden.
Yeah. I picked this up from LiveScience.com. There's a link in the show notes, of course, and a fun image. But let's set the stage. We all know this. More than 9,300 tons or 8,440 metric tons of space objects, including space junk, such as inoperative satellites and chunks of spent rocket stages, currently orbit the Earth. I think we've all seen the terrible images. It looks like you see the Earth and then you see all these little dots that represent all this junk that's up there. But the shiny metals that they're made from, such as lightweight titanium and aluminum, increase the overall brightness of the night sky by more than 10% over large parts of the planet, creating ambient light pollution that makes distant space phenomena hard to detect. So the reflective part of it and the light pollution part of that whole equation, I hadn't really thought about before until reading this article. So spacecraft made from metal are also expensive and pose a threat to the International Space Station, other spacecraft carrying humans, and if they're big enough to survive reentry, could be potentially dangerous for people on Earth too. So that's part of the setting the stage for what the problem is. So with this problem in mind, NASA and the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency are planning to launch the world's first wooden satellite into space in a bid or an effort to make spaceflight more susceptible. Wow. LIGNO, that's LIGNO, SAT for satellite, LIGNO-SAT run together, is a coffee mug-sized satellite, so it's small, made from magnolia wood, is set to launch into Earth's orbit by the summer of 2024, according to the space agencies. And a side note, LIGNO, by the way, LIGNO, refers to wood. For example, lignocellulose is a good example of that. So why? Why wood? Well, wood doesn't burn or rot in the lifeless vacuum of space, but it will incinerate into a fine ash upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Hey, that sounds good, making it surprisingly useful and biodegradable material for future satellites. They're serious about this. This is not some kind of a joke.
Right.
After successfully testing their wood samples aboard the International Space Station earlier this year, the scientists believe the test satellite is fit for launch. The researchers noted, quote, 3 wood specimens were tested and showed no deformation after space exposure, despite the extreme environment of outer space involving significant temperature changes and exposure to intense cosmic rays and dangerous solar particles. For 10 months, they did this test. The test confirmed no decomposition or deformations, such as cracking, warping, peeling, or surface damage. So they had a successful test run here. And to decide which wood to use, the scientists sent 3 wood samples earlier this year, magnolia, cherry, and birch, to the International Space Station to be kept in a module that was exposed to space. The researchers settled upon magnolia wood because it is less likely to split or break during manufacture. All three of the woods did just fine in outer space, but the magnolia won the deal here because of its resistance to splitting or breaking during manufacture. So wood satellites, that may be the future. Talk about a trend.
There's a couple of things that I could comment here, and I will. That there's something about like the Japanese. And by the way, for those watching the video portion, kind of pulled up the graph there.
Yes. Yes. Space junk.
All the space junk, and like, yeah, if you're watching, it looks like just a swarm and mass. Like, if you want to send up a satellite, you got to find something that doesn't touch any of that, which good luck, because
what a mess.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess, like Ralph said. But I gotta say, leave it to the Japanese, because like Japan's well known for like their woodworking. I guess they don't have like a lot of metal on the island of Japan, because they're an island, but they have a lot of trees. So they join everything with like woodworking. They dovetail everything. They have like very special kind of joints, and they're very very good at joining wood together. So if anyone was going to make a wooden satellite, leave it to the Japanese. They are just masters with woodworking. So I'm not surprised at all. But
and in fact, hey, I wonder why they didn't try bamboo.
True. It's really turning these satellites into things that aren't expensive and won't crack, and all the reasons that you gave in the article, Ralph. Okay, my last snide comment I'm going to make about this, and move on to story number 2. My last snide comment is, it sounds like the next time you see the International Space Station, it's going to be decorated like BB Barnes or something. It's going to be full of like soft woods and soft plush pillows and stuff like that. That's all I'm hearing. Is they're going to replace all the metal with wood, I'm sure. So,
yeah, there you go. How about that? Huh? Back to the Future.
Yes, nice wicker furniture in the International Space Station, I'm sure. So there you go. Okay, so that's story number 1, and still very, very cool. Story number 1, story number 2. Let's go ahead and talking about, micromotors or robots, or just things that I think people don't really consider to be, kind of robots or stuff like that, is really going to play a big part in this. But still, a way to purify wastewater, which is of course affecting billions of people, not millions, billions of people every single day. So any kind of solution to this, perfect.
Yeah, you're right. And the story that we're going to do is in the category of, there's so much research for years now, and more research of course will be coming. What can we do with wastewater to make it a useful product? How can we turn it into fertilizer? How can we do this? How can we do that? This one talks about something called Micromotors, purify wastewater, and create green energy. So what's cool about this is a double win: purifying wastewater and also creating green energy. Irresistible headline, once again, come from an outlet called interestingengineering.com. Great outlet. The show notes come out to computeramerica.com. Click on the Ralph Bond tab, get the show notes. We have the links. You can learn more and dive deeper, but we're going to give you the highlights. So here we go. Tiny self-propelled devices called micromotors can be designed to move through wastewater, targeting specific contaminants. And they have the unique ability to carry functional materials or coatings that can absorb or react with pollutants, helping to remove them from the water. So that's one part of the equation. Researchers at the Institute of Chemical Research of Catalonia in Spain have created autonomous micromotors that move around efficiently, cleaning wastewater as they go and producing ammonia that could be used as a renewable energy source. That's the double win of this story, which I love. The motors will now be turned, and when we say motors, Ben, you made a good point about this too. We talk about robotics, we're talking about motors. We're not talking about metal little mechanical motor. We're talking about kind of a bio motor, and we'll explain. So the motors will now be tuned using an AI technique created by the University of Gothenburg to optimize their outcomes, making them super efficient, cleaning and energy generating machines. And again, machine, most normal people, when you think of machine, you think of a car or an airplane. No, you have to take the term robotics and machine and motor and think about it in a different way. as we'll explain here. So here's what these micromotors are. These devices consist of a silicon and manganese dioxide tube. So a silicon and manganese, I hope I'm saying that right, dioxide tube with a bubble release mechanism, to propel the device at one end that functions due to chemical interactions. The tube moves in the water with the aid of these bubbles, which operate as a motor. Okay, so that's what I was alluding to earlier.
And I know that the researchers doing this, like, I know they're not graphic design, students; they're mechanical engineering students. The picture that they supplied is obviously just for kind of basic,
conceptual,
but very, very conceptual, but. The picture makes a lot more sense after reading that. It is propelled by bubbles, and you can see that very crudely represented in the picture. So makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's true. And that picture does help. And again, if you're listening to this as a podcast only, please come out to computeramerica.com, get those show notes, get the link, and see what we're talking about. So the chemical component, lactase, LACCASE, which coats the micromotors, expedites the transformation of urea, which is present in contaminated water. And it expedites the transformation of urea into ammonia upon immediate contact with the device. The ammonia can then be converted into hydrogen, a green and clean energy source. Wow. Part I didn't dive into or didn't learn more about, and I'm curious, is how do you collect this ammonia? It's all well and good to have these little micromotors going around in wastewater.
How do you separate the ammonia from the water? Yeah.
Right. How do you collect it? But they must have something in mind for that purpose. But a couple of aside notes here. What is lactase? Lactases are the versatile enzymes which catalyze oxidation reactions coupled to 4-electron reduction of molecular oxygen to water. Wow, that's a mouthful of geekiness there. They are multi-copper enzymes which are widely distributed in higher plants and fungi. So that's what lactase is. And what is urea? Well, urea, a colorless crystalline compound, which is the main nitrogen-containing breakdown product of protein metabolism in mammals, which is in turn excreted, in urine. So lactase and urea are kind of the key elements in this whole process that they've come up with. So my comment is, so in a nutshell, these tiny devices could swim around in wastewater, turning the urea into ammonia that can then be converted into hydrogen. That's the essential good thing coming on here. Again, though, Ben and I both wonder, how do you collect this ammonia? That's all well and good, but how do you collect it? Now, for the tubes to effectively cleanse the water, the scientists must now improve their design. So they are very upfront about this, kind of a reality check. To do this, they need to observe how these compounds move and how long they function when submerged. This, however, is challenging to do under a microscope, since the bubbles generated by the devices obstruct the view. Makes it hard to see what's going on. No surprise. But luckily, it is now feasible to approximate the movements of the micromotors thanks to an artificial intelligence technique created by the Gothenburg University researchers. So this is a Spain and Germany collaboration. Right. Machine learning algorithms make it possible to monitor multiple motors swimming around in liquid at the same time. Okay, since micromotors can travel and carry out specified activities on a micro scale independently, they have become a promising tool for environmental remediation. All right, another reality check. The scientists do not know when they will be able to unleash their devices on a large scale. For the time being, they continue to work on this important innovation with hopes of making it universally viable in the coming years. And to learn more, check out the study they published in the journal Nanoscale. And once again, in the show notes, we have a link to that study if you want to dive real deep into this very interesting story.
Yeah, and I'm very not super well versed, so please listen to my opinion as I talk about this. They're turning urea into ammonia, obviously, and ammonia then, from what I can read, Ralph, there are actually not biosolvents. It's kind of the opposite. It's like a think of like a sponge that would only attract the ammonia. and you could put in like either like a powder or some kind of substance, or even like just a physical filter or an object that you could put in there, and the ammonia would be attracted to it, very, very quickly and effectively.
Interesting.
So like, you wouldn't just dump all these things, Ralph, into like a river, for instance, but you could put it in like a wastewater treatment facility, and that would then turn it into ammonia, which then could be collected much more easily, which then the collected ammonia can be turned into, for instance, fuel and, green fuel and stuff like that. So this is the part that's turning urea into ammonia, and which is a much more common and effective and useful chemical. So very, very cool. And I hope that they, kind of get this working, like they said, universally, because the material, like what they're doing, seems so simple, and that's like the best part. It's not something crazy space age, or these huge, like, oh, Ralph, with I think the other week we did one where it was like a carbon scrubber, like, it pulled carbon dioxide out of the air. They're like, with a simple $5 billion investment, we can pull carbon dioxide out of the air, which, don't get me wrong, was like the first time a facility was truly carbon negative, which is, a breakthrough in itself. But it required a big facility. This is like the opposite. This is like, these things are super simple, which hopefully makes them, super viable. So we'll see. Yeah.
And again, your point about this being something that would be deployed in a waste treatment plant makes complete sense, because you'd have a contained, controllable environment for not only letting this happen, but collecting it through the sponges or other filtration systems. No, that's great. I think that's where this is headed.
Probably won't be dumping this in the oceans en masse anytime soon. No. This is something for human waste treatment, but still very, very cool. So story number 2, story number 3. Let's go ahead and move on a little bit here and talk about, smart trailers. And this is something that, obviously December, shipping, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Moving goods from point A to point B, making that more energy efficient is, just probably the best thing that we can do. Like, that would have the most immediate impact, other than, breakthrough technology, new vehicles, so on and so forth, giving our existing vehicles a boost. So let's go ahead and talk about story number 3.
I love this story. This one's not so much a futuristic one. This is really on the horizon from Popular Science. And what I love about this is there's so much attention and so much interest in hybrid or all-electric freight trucks, the so-called tractor, the front end, the actual engine where the driver sits and all that good stuff. A lot of attention on that. But wait a minute. We're going to talk about a company that said, why can't the trailer play a role? So the headline here is how smart trailers could give trucking a clean, electrified boost. Again, from Popular Science. We have the link in the show notes. So here we go. Of course, this goes without saying, one of the most ubiquitous sights on the road is an 18-wheel truck. These large, loud vehicles are prolific presence on America's interstates and around the world too, and are made up of 2 big components. The tractor, that always seems funny to me. When I say tractor, I think about, farm tractors, right? But they call these things, the front end, the tractor, which does the pulling and is where the driver is, and the trailer where the cargo goes. Well, in an effort to clean up the relatively large emissions that come from this part of the transportation sector, some companies are working on electric tractors that can pull trailers. Freightliner has a model called the e-Cascadia. Tesla has its Semi. Volvo has its VNR, and others are working on it too. So, of course, that's where all the attention has been in the last several years. But a relatively new company called Range Energy is focusing on the trailer itself. Love it. Equipping it with batteries, a motor, and other smart features or intelligence features. The trailer can be paired with a tractor burning diesel or an electric one, or even a hybrid one. That's part of the beauty of this idea. This trailer is not uniquely paired only with a certain kind of tractor. It could be paired to a traditional tractor, or it could be paired to a hybrid, or it could be paired up or linked up with an electric one.
It's definitely adding technology to the trailer, but it's not fundamentally changing the trailer by any means. So it's still platform agnostic.
And still a functioning trailer. You'll see it, as we'll learn more here as we go into the story. So Range Energy, this company with this trailer idea, is led by Ali Javedan, an early Tesla employee and veteran of Google and Zoox, the autonomous car company now owned by Amazon. So this guy who's behind this company has a really great resume. So Range's product, which is called the RA-01 product, looks like a regular trailer. You look at it, looks like a regular freight trailer, typically a big, boxy and boring presence on the road, but has some key changes. There's a motor that turns one of the axles at the back of the trailer. That motor gets the power it needs from an onboard battery pack, which isn't inside the trailer where it would interfere with cargo space, but below it. As you're watching the video, you're seeing the illustrations here where the battery pack is. That's clever. There's also what Javidan, the fellow behind this company, refers to as a smart kingpin. A kingpin on an 18-wheel truck is the point where the trailer connects to the tractor. What makes the Range Energy Kingpin different from a regular kingpin is that it senses what the tractor is doing. And as Mr. Javidan says, it's a real-time measurement of how hard the tractor is pulling. Interesting. Because the smart kingpin gathers this information, the trailer can be, as he says, kind of like an obedient dog on a leash, with the goal of making the trailer feel essentially weightless to the tractor. Wow. The trailer wouldn't ever push the tractor, though, but it does contribute to the whole propulsion situation. It's a kind of a complementary sort of thing. The result, according to the folks at Range and Mr. Javidan, is that this trailer is paired with that if this trailer is paired with a diesel burning tractor, the tractor could get around 35 to 40% better fuel efficiency. Take an existing diesel burning tractor, nothing special here, millions of them out there, combine it with this trailer, and you could see 35 to 40% better fuel efficiency, which in turn reduces emissions, right? And if it were paired with an electric tractor, it could add about 100 miles of range or more to the whole equation. Wow. What's not to like about this? Just wow.
Very impressive.
Yeah. And Mr. Javidan says that they'll start beta testing next year. So it's coming up, with deliveries to customers planned for 2025. And he says you will start seeing these trailers on the roads in real volumes, he predicts, starting in 2026. How about that? I just thought, wow.
Which for, kind of everyday people on the road, it'll just mean, really for them, nothing. Like you may notice it has like a little bit, more underneath it. But Ralph, I can imagine like a really good use case where, let's say, a truck regularly brings cargo from one place to another. And let's say like the tractor trailer has a range of 200 miles and, the facility is 250 miles away. Adding that extra 100 prevents a stop, gets you there completely. Maybe they can move the fuel station to the site itself. It wouldn't have to, pull off the highway at any point. Stuff like that really does make a difference.
Yeah, and again, I want to stress, as the article very much stresses, and we've already made this point, but I want to leave the audience with this very important key element here. There's a lot of technology things that we talk about, Ben, that say this will work if we change everything, right? This is saying you got a traditional diesel tractor, no problem. You got a hybrid, great. You got an all-electric, groovy. But you can do this with existing gear and benefit 35 to 40% reduction in or improvement in fuel efficiency and consumption. So that's one of the things that really attracted me to what Mr. Javidan and crew are doing at Range. Really cool story.
It's electrifying without having to pull every, like you said, tractor off the road.
Yeah,
very, very
right.
cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Great transitional kind of concept.
For sure. And even after, and like you said, even after things are all electric, it still boosts the range in and of itself. So it's very cool. Although I will say, like during your kind of summation of it, that one point about it being essentially, quote, kind of like an obedient dog on a leash, for some reason, the scene from Vacation about the dog being dragged behind the car came up. So, tough little mutt, if you know the scene. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not that though. But anyways, story number 3, story number 4. Let's go ahead and skip on over.
Yes.
And we were talking a bit about this before the show, and this is going to affect, hopefully have a positive impact on a lot of people's lives. Because it's a pretty tough diagnosis, but early diagnosis is, of course, and of course, everyone out there listening is like, what is he going to say? Early diagnosis helps regardless of what you're dealing with. Early diagnosis is always, the answer. But in this case, we're talking about autism. So story number 4.
Yeah, that's right. And what we do, folks, if you're new to the show, usually the last story we do is a medical technology advancement of some kind, a medical research advancement and so forth. And this story comes from newsmedicallifesciences.com. And the headline here is really, wow. And this got a lot of coverage, unfortunately, because of the terrible negative stories of the world. It kind of gets buried. But here's the headline. New artificial intelligence system achieves 98.5% accuracy in autism diagnosis of children. Wow. Couldn't resist this.
That's very accurate.
Got a link. Yeah, that's just stunning. So a little setup here. According to the CDC's 2023 Community Report on Autism, fewer than half of children with autism spectrum disorder receive a developmental evaluation by 3 years of age. And 30% of children who met the criteria for autism spectrum disorder did not receive a formal diagnosis by 8 years of age. That's the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So a newly developed artificial intelligence system that analyzes specialized MRIs of the brain accurately diagnosed children between the ages of 24 and 48 months, very early, right? With autism at a 98.5% accuracy rate, according to the research being presented at the just happened very recently, annual meeting of the Radiological Society of North America. Wow. The AI system involves isolating brain tissue images from the DT MRI scans and extracting imaging markers that indicate the level of connectivity between brain regions. A machine learning algorithm compares the marker patterns in the brains of children with autism to those of the normally developed brains. A little aside here I know what an MRI is, but what DT MRI? What's that? Well, diffusion tension imaging, a magnetic resonance imaging method that analyzes the anatomy of nerve cells and the complex neuronal, referencing nerves, network of the brain. It is most commonly used to provide imaging of the brain. So actually, I've had that done to me, and I didn't know it was DT MRI. They just said MRI. Anyway.
Diffusion tensor imaging. So I had no idea.
Yeah, gotta love that. Yeah, that's kind of cool. And here's a quote from one of the lead researchers in this effort. Autism is primarily a disease of improper connections within the brain. That was interesting. And again, you can get the reference to the person who did this, made this comment, because he's got a long, long title. And DT MRI captures these abnormal connections that lead to the symptoms that children with autism often have, such as impaired social communication and repetitive behavior. So it's all a problem of improper connections in the brain. And this scanning technique and the artificial intelligence can quickly analyze this and compare those connection patterns of children with autism to those without and see the differences and help predict. That's the essential nugget of what's going on here. Isn't that something? The research
sorry to cut in there, but so it's able to really kind of catch those mismatched connections. So you're not like trying to feed in maybe 2 years worth of data about your kid, and it's kind of working through all this stuff and diagnosing autism. It's just simply measuring like the physical change that could lead to autism. It's diagnosing the thing right away instead of like looking like, I guess, Ralph, like autism nowadays, like you go to a specialist, you do some tests, you kind of look for the symptoms of autism, and then you can diagnose autism. This is just looking for the cause of autism. And then if you have you got it. That's very cool.
And very cool. And again, as the article stresses, being able to do it early, 24 to 48 months of the child's life, to be able to figure this out. What if every child, it's like a routine exam, goes through something like this and says, oh, great, or they can, if you can identify this problem early on, you can do the treatments and start working with the child very early on. That's the wonderful thing about it. In fact, that's just stressed here in the next point. The researchers applied their methodology to the DT MRI brain scans of 226 children between the ages of 24 and 48 months from the Autism Brain Imaging Data Exchange-2. The data set included scans of 126 children affected by autism and 100 normally developing children. So that's that comparison. The technology demonstrated 97% sensitivity, 98% specificity, and an overall accuracy, as we've said multiple times before, of 98.5% in identifying children with autism. The AI system produces a report detailing which neural pathways are affected, the anticipated impact on brain functionality, and the severity grade that can be used to guide early therapeutic intervention.
So it doesn't just say yes or no, check or check mark or X. It's actually putting a report out saying this is on a scale, and so it's like detail. That's interesting.
Isn't that something? Yeah, I mean, imagine if you're a physician or a team of people working with a child in question and being able to know, well, this is a really severe case, or this is a mild case, or what's going on. And then
your comment of like just routine screening, gives it even more of an importance of that. It's not like something that it's like, oh, I have a broken leg, you scan the leg. No, like this should just be routine for kids between
ideally
24 and 48 months.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think we might be on a path to that, which is just and another example of a positive artificial intelligence contribution, folks.
Few and far
AI
between,
is not it's great. And to end up the story here, the researchers are working toward commercialization and obtaining FDA clearance for their AI software. So stay tuned. This is research that's been initially very successful.
Yeah, and another cool part is that just like you said, you had DT MRI for I'm sure other routine checks, and
other
issues.
Checks.
This is not something like MRI. Is saying MRI machine kind of like saying ATM machine? MRI machines are in hospitals already. So it's just using tools that doctors have and then using AI to, hopefully, kind of diagnose the stuff in a little bit different way. So this is such a great story. And Ralph, like this is almost akin to me. Like this is almost akin to like being able to sequence people's genomes and be like, oh, you have the genetic markers for this kind of cancer. You have the genetic marker for this kind of disease. You have the like it's turning like in some cases healthcare from like a general system of like, okay, Ralph is a, blah, blah, blah age male that does, from this background and a family history of this into a very specific, like this is Ralph and this is how we treat Ralph. Same way with this, like this is the level of autism that this, that this child has. And this is how we can kind of work with this, start therapy, start, early education, stuff like that. Turns it from just a general diagnosis of, oh, you have some level of autism to, this 2-year-old is going to need this kind of learning and this kind of, it has such great implications. And, while obviously any kind of condition, I'm not saying that autism is like debilitating and life ending and that kind of thing, but the more and the earlier the better off the prognosis is for everyone. So very, very cool to see. And there's so much love about that last story. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, just because it's the last story we're going to talk about today doesn't mean it's the last story in the show notes. If you go check those out, Ralph includes honorable mentions, which are not stories that aren't good enough to make it onto the show. They're just stories we didn't have time for. So Ralph, let's mention the honorable mentions.
Sort of like our bonus stories for you to go and research if you come out to computeramerica.com and get the show notes for today. So the first one is AI enables rapid and reliable solar cell production in Australia. Oh my, the Australians are so amazing in this field. A lot of great research comes from interestingengineering.com. Another bonus story for you. Construction robot builds massive stone walls on its own. That is a great story from newscientist.com. I loved it because, again, as you know, I came from an architecture, engineering, and construction background with Autodesk for many years. So I love that one. And the last one here, solar-powered Japanese tiny van. I love the look of this little thing. They call it the Puzzle, unveiled ahead of North American sales. So this is a reality coming to your town soon, but I just love the goofy look of this thing. If you are listening to us as a podcast, come out and get the show notes. You'll see the picture of this thing. I think it's just charming. It's a solar.
It's like one cutout, like the windshield is like one cutout away from like being like a Volkswagen bus. It's very boxy, but still very, very cute. So, and cool that it's being sold in North America. So, hey, hopefully we see some of these driving around here before long. I like that a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, the music means that we are done. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you missed any of it, if you want to go check some stuff out, Ralph, scratches the surface and he does a good job of, getting you the points. But if you want to find out more about any of this, computeramerica.com, Ralph Bond segment at the top. And you'll be able to find everything that we're talking about. I promise, Ralph isn't just making this up. He's not just a great storyteller. No, all of this you can find more at our website. So with that being said, until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. And again, last week of December, Computer America is off, CES early January. And until then, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Catch you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.